Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and tonight we're starting a series of programs on community programs at the Y. And to help us understand their outreach, I have Rebecca Jackson, the Director of Community Programs. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me here.
And the first issue I think we want to discuss is, what do you do about a kid that's acting up in class? Well, the traditional way is just suspend them. But there's a better way. It's called PASS. And to help us understand that, we have with us Michelle Muffett Lipinski, the principal of the North Shore, I forgot, where is it? North Shore Recovery High School, yeah. This could be a mouthful at times.
It is a mouthful.
Yeah. And welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for being here.
So, this better idea, PASS, it really comes down to positive alternative to student suspension. Well, what are you going to do for an alternative? What's a better way?
So back in 2017, when a lot of students were being suspended for what was starting to come up as the vaping epidemic, which is happening right now, I started to talk to some of the deans of discipline around the area. And we started meeting kind of about every month or so, talking about what we can do instead of suspending them. Because there was really no robust in-school suspension program, and they were fully aware of that, and they weren't going to change behaviors based on what they were being able to provide in school suspension. And they don't want to, like, nobody wants to suspend students. We all know the outcomes are really bad. Yeah. So kind of informally, we started meeting, and we actually started meeting at the YMCA because that happened to be a central place. And so so we would sit there, and probably about 6 or 7 months into it, we started bringing in some Y staff as well as the JRI staff to start talking about, like, how we can.
JRI?
It's a juvenile resource. Justice Resource Institute, and it's a behavioral health provider in the area. So we just started bringing in people who kind of want to work in a more restorative way and want to work with adolescents who we know, are kind of getting caught up in these. So we started with vaping and use of marijuana. We wanted to find a way to reach them and kind of teach them a restorative way to change their behaviors.
Well, the basic idea of suspension is you got a kid who's acting up,
right? And
the teacher in the classroom can't control that kid and the rest of the class too, so out. And that sounds like a good idea, except that's probably what the kid wants, because they don't want to be in the classroom in the first place. So it's not at all helpful to send them home for a couple of days or weeks, and they think it's a vacation. So there's got to be a better way to do this. And how does PASS do that?
So PASS is a wonderful program because it really limits the amount of time that a student is out of school. So instead of, say, a traditional suspension of a week or 2 weeks where the kid is at home, they're not getting the support they need, they're not connecting with trusted adults or with their peers, we can send them to PASS. And at PASS, we half the time that they're out of school, because really our goal is to get them the support they need and then get them back to school with all those supports there as well, too.
Well, you say you send them to PASS. Where do you exactly send them? Where do they go?
Absolutely. So PASS is located out of the McPherson Youth Center in Beverly. Some people might know it as the building that's next to the skate park in Beverly. And it's a really wonderful space because it's a youth-oriented space. The McPherson Youth Center is actually a city-owned building, but the YMCA has been running youth programming out of the space for a number of years now. And there's a basketball court, there's a skate park, and it feels like a comfortable space where some of these teens who are going to PASS can really feel comfortable, can open up and start having great conversations.
Well, is it just Beverly schools involved in this, or how far do you reach?
So the PASS program serves 14 different schools across the North Shore, so I believe that's a total of 10 different districts. And we really don't want transportation to be a barrier either, so we really do encourage families to bring their kids to PASS so that they can see the space and feel comfortable, but we also offer free transportation services for youth who aren't able to come otherwise.
And the catchment is from Lynn down to Lawrence, to Danvers. I mean, so it really does span most of the North Shore.
Exactly.
Well, when you send a kid to this PASS program, is it the same as going to high school?
Well,
8 o'clock in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, or what?
So what we all know, and the reason that we started this is because the students don't have a trusted adult in their lives that they can kind of determine whether or not they need additional supports, right? So they tend not to open up because of fear of stigma or shame or whatever they're struggling with. So early on, we determined that the students that come to the PASS program get 5 interventions. They're going to get 5 behavioral health interventions. They're going to get an anxiety assessment. They're going to get a depression assessment. They're going to get an SI, which is suicide. They're going to get CRAFT, which is substance use, and they're going to get ACEs, which is childhood adverse experiences. So they get all of these assessments, and it really does give them some insight of why they're behaving the way they're behaving. So there's always something underlying, and we never get to that in the school system because we're so busy trying to chase after them and trying to find out like how to, like you said, suspend them. So what we do is we have 2 counselors, we have a program director, and we have a youth coordinator, and we work with them to try to figure out the why, right? Instead of figuring out the what, like what did you do wrong, it's why did that happen? And so we try to get to the bottom of that and get them back to their school systems in a more restorative way. So when they go back, they've identified people in their district that they can speak to when they're having maybe reoffending, when they're at risk of reoffending for the reason that they were suspended, whether it's substance use or something else that they've, an infraction that they've incurred.
You say you got a couple of counselors. Are these certified counselors, or how do they get certified? Is it just a teacher who taken an extra course, or what? No.
So that's our partner with Children's Friends and Family Services. They have licensed clinicians who partner with us. So PASS is actually made up of 3 partner organizations. So it's Children's Friends, it's North Shore Education Consortium, and the YMCA. And what's great about that is that all 3 agencies really have different areas of expertise and bring something really special to the table. And it creates this really well-rounded program that provides all the different supports that these different agencies offer. So that clinical support, or that educational background, or that positive youth development background that the Y has, for example. But yes, all those clinicians are through our, like I said, our partner, Children's Friends and Family Services. Every single student meets one-on-one with a clinician to get all of those assessments done. We really try to have the student meet with a clinician on the first day to really help set the tone for the remainder of their time at PASS. And it's a one-on-one conversation, so it's private. And we've had students tell us before that, this is the first time anybody has ever asked me any of these questions before.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to find somebody who'll sit down and listen to them. And it's one thing to just talk about your problem, but if nobody's listening, it's off to the ether. It doesn't do much good. And I guess one of the things that I was looking through some of the paraphernalia you sent me, and he was saying that something like a 2.8 is the average number of days suspension. That's kind of a short time to get something done, isn't it?
Brief interventions are possibly one of the most undervalued and underused interventions, because I feel like if you have more than 5 to 10 days, you're almost too comfortable in that situation. So we really want to get to the why. And if they're going to reoffend, they can come back to PASS. So we'd rather have a brief intervention, kind of figure out what's going on, get them back to school, and see if they can take the tools that we've taught them and really use them in the school setting. And so if they do reoffend, then it's just another conversation. Okay, you're back with us. What other tools can we give you? So it's I think there's probably a 30% recidivism. So we get about 30% of our students who do reoffend and come back to us, and we do a kind of a deeper dive into why they're whatever the offenses that they're.
When you say you're doing a deeper dive, how do you bring in different people, or?
No, it's just a different conversation. So we try to give them the tools. Let's just say it's a vaping incident, and so we try to give them the tools. A lot of our staff have been trained with the UMass model for nicotine cessation, and so they'll kind of assess them depending on what they need, give them some tools, right? Just like a basic tools, maybe some fidget spinners, or maybe talk to them about why they're vaping, what they can do differently. But the next level is going to be like, wow, maybe you're more addicted. So it's a different conversation the more that they come back, kind of digging deeper into why, like I said, we don't know why they're offending. We can't figure that out in 3 days or less. But what's great is that what I really love, and what I thought is magical, which I didn't know was going to happen, is we have these students from all over the North Shore. They don't know each other. So we have this group in the morning. It's about an hour long. It's a psychoed group. It might talk about stress, anxiety, substance use. You name it, they talk about everything. And when they're sitting around, they forget that they're not with their peers. And so they start talking. And they use this language that they don't use in typical school settings. And so when I observed a group the other day, I was watching this young man, and he was incredibly articulate. And later on, I go, would you say something like that at school? And he was like, no way. I'd get judged for that. And so I think what we take is we
So you get what for that?
he would get judged because he
judged,
was
okay.
speaking very sentimentally about like what was
Okay.
happening in his life. And I said, so you have nobody that you would you wouldn't share this with anybody else? And he said, absolutely not. So it's a safe place. It's monitored by people who have been doing this for many years. And it's with this group of students who are all challenged with the same thing. Like they all feel kind of disconnected. They feel like, so it's almost like they find their tribe there and they don't have to worry about their peers going, oh, this is like, so once again, it just takes them out of a situation where they don't have to like have this persona.
Well, you're putting them in a situation with like-minded, like addicted or like situation
kids.
students. It's like a AA class
It's great. It's
where
just, yeah,
they're all in the same boat together,
absolutely.
and they can understand each other when they say something about, I'm hooked on something or other. And,
Right.
and that's the other question is, how many of these, what's the percent of addiction problems that you're working with?
About 78% of them are there for either vaping marijuana or THC. So
Yeah.
about 3/4 of them are there due to some type of substance use.
But we really do serve a lot of different sort of reasons for them to be referred at the program as well. So sometimes schools will send a student who maybe needs additional support around mental health and maybe some sort of navigation around how to connect with additional services. Sometimes students are sent to the program because they're avoiding school. So it really does run the gamut.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a teacher I follow on one of the blogs, and he teaches 7th grade language arts kind of thing. And he describes teaching at that level as crowd control, where there's always some kid in the class that wants to talk or wants to do something or doesn't want to do what the assignment for the day is. And these kind of students, they've got a problem that they, I think, don't really want to be in school in the first place. So aside from having a substance abuse kind of problem or something else, this kind of fundamental, I don't want to be here, I don't like what I'm doing, how do you get around that? I can understand using the AA model for substance abuse, but when you start to talk about just an attitude problem or lack of support at home is the other issue he keeps bringing up. How can you work on that kind of a problem?
So I think the reason we started this is because there's so many barriers to accessing any type of mental health treatment, right? So we know that there's barriers because parents maybe can't fill out the sheets that they need, the intake forms, or they can't find a therapist. So this is a zero barrier entrance into a system where we can find them. We have a person that does a lot of resource navigation. So if they need supports, knowing that they may have a less than functional home life, then we need to find supports beyond the school day. So taking it off of the school, because it's not just a school issue, it's a community issue, realizing that there are behavioral supports out there. Maybe they're going to be doing a virtual one-to-one therapy session with a student, but just finding them another place to connect with a trusted adult outside of the school system, or maybe within the school system, that's what we're trying to provide. So zero barrier. So we don't have to do any insurance referrals. We don't have to figure out where their therapy. They get therapy on demand. They get the treatment on demand model when they walk into the PASS program. So if they're struggling with something like that, and we have a lot of those, they'll come in and I'll see a person, and a young woman a couple weeks ago walked out and she was just sobbing, just like Rebecca was saying, and she said, I needed that so much. I just needed to spill my tea, dump my bucket, whatever it is. That felt so good. I've never done that before. So just being able to share where she needs more support, and then working with the therapy, we're working with whoever's the behavioral health provider to find her supports outside of wherever she wasn't looking before. No stone left unturned, and get her that support that she needs. So I truly believe when a student is acting out in a school setting, we got to figure out why. It's not what happened to you, it's why. It's not, we got to change the way we look at that. So I don't think any child wants to be singled out for bad behavior. I think that they're doing that because of something else.
And about a quarter of our students come to PASS already with additional sort of clinical services outside of school. And then for about another quarter of our students who do come to PASS, we either help them to expand those services if needed or give them access to completely new services that they've never had before.
That's the other question is, are you working on the right problem? Right. And it takes some digging to find out what's the real issue. Mm-hmm. And maybe, like you said, it's a home environment that's not supportive, or maybe it's bullying in the classroom.
All of those.
And there's a whole bunch of issues that keep coming up. So I guess one of the things that starts to run through my mind is, okay, you got a kid that acts up so difficult that the teacher can't put up with it anymore. You're out of here. The old hockey move. You're out. But there are other kids still in the classroom that aren't that bad yet. Or maybe they won't get that bad, but they won't get much better either. Is there anything around like a PASS for those kids who are still in the middle that are not your stellar students that are pulling straight A's or really like the work, but they're there, scribble out an assignment, and they're going through the motions. And I get concerned that they sort of get lost in the shuffle. And this kind of a program where you try to address, like you say, the why. The why doesn't have to be necessarily an addiction or a bad home situation. It could be lots of other things that I'm not smart enough to even suggest to what others have. But how can you expand the program? I'm not going to do it. You wouldn't trust me. But how can you expand the program to get to these other kids? Is there something you can do with the teachers or the administrators to say that, okay, yeah, we can identify the bad actors and because they're out on the street. Now, what about the rest of the kids?
So I think that school districts are doing a really great job of working with a CASEL or working with RTI, which is, response to intervention, PBIS. So we're a tier 3 intervention. Removing them from the school is the highest level of intervention. So you're looking at that tier 2, right? The students who may be struggling with the ABCs, right? The academics, the behavioral changes and changes in grades. Like that's the first thing we need to identify. I think districts are just now starting to realize that there are indicators, really early warning indicators for those adolescents that exactly you're talking about, who maybe were completely engaged in the 5th grade, but the 7th grade are getting C's. Like, we need to figure out why we're not tracking them a little bit better, and what are our interventions at a tier 2 level, almost universal interventions for those adolescents. And I think school districts are starting to address that. I do a training called I Can Help training. I work with a lot of teachers. I work with a lot of administrators to try to address just that. Like, how is it that we can have adolescents who need that support come to us, who can trust us, and say, like, I don't need a level 3 intervention. I don't need to be taken out of the school. I don't need additional supports. I just need to feel re-engaged with my community. This is so prevalent right now, post-pandemic, or I don't know if we're still in the pandemic, but that's what we're seeing across the board. I work with a lot of districts across the country, and it's pervasive that children, 50% of students, don't feel engaged, and it's impeding their ability to access the academics. And so I feel like we, as a community, we as people who work in education and beyond, really need to figure out how to target interventions exactly for that group of students who are at risk of tipping, right? We got to build the guardrails so they don't go off the cliff, because we already know the kids who are going off the cliff. We need to build guardrails to keep them on that path. And that's what I think we're working on right now with maybe, the I Can Help program or other programs that we can keep kids in our schools.
And I think it's also important to note that you don't actually have to be suspended to attend PASS. Traditionally, a lot of our students who have come to the program have been suspended because maybe they got caught vaping or they're really struggling to show up at school. But, we also very much welcome students who districts think might need that extra support, who maybe they want to have, connected with a clinician, or maybe they just want them to be able to take a moment outside of the district, reset so that they are better equipped to come back to school, come back to class. So we're already actually serving a lot of those students at PASS as well, too. They aren't just students who are suspended.
Well, could a parent just call you up and say, my kid is struggling, I don't know what's wrong, could you help out, would you?
So we do have, our resource navigator who's always happy to work with families, but we really do want to have the districts as our partner of this conversation and sort of in terms of supporting these students. So a parent can't self-refer their kid to PASS. That referral comes through the districts, comes through the administration, and it's really a partnership that we have with them to make sure that, what the services that we're offering those families, those students, are really in line with what the districts are trying to do to support their families and their kids as well, too. I don't know if you want to add to that as well.
If we do get a community member contacting us, we will go right to the school district and say, hey, we just got a call from so-and-so.
The way to make it happen is the parent has to go to probably the administrator in the school
Or
and
social
say,
worker. Yeah.
or the teacher, and say, hey, I want to give my kids some extra support.
Yeah.
And if everything goes according to plan, that teacher will then make a referral, and the kid will show up at your door 2 days later.
In a perfect world.
Yeah.
That's how it would
Hey,
go.
you designed the world to be perfect, and when things go off the track, you put them back on track.
Well, I think parents are also really reticent to ask for additional support because they're afraid that that's a sign of weakness or there's something that's going to happen that's going to reflect poorly on them. So I think, we tend to, I don't think we give a lot of parents that would send their child until they get to know us. Then they love us. I mean,
Yeah,
as soon
that's
as-
what
but there's
we're
a
here
trust
for.
issue.
Yeah.
I think there's a trust issue. Like, where am I sending my child? The great thing about PASS is when they come to PASS, instead of getting a suspension on their record, it's called intervention. So it's a treatment modality. So they don't even have a suspension on their record. So it cuts the suspension in half. It's not called a suspension. They get treatment on demand. So there's a lot of benefits added. So parents really do love it. I mean, we've worked with over 800 students, and most of them, when they leave, they get an exit survey, and we get a 4.7 positivity out of 5. The students, when they get there, really love it. However, going there, it's just this unknown entity. They never know what they're walking into. They're like, I thought you're going to be wearing white jackets. We thought it was a clinic. They think we're going to be doing surgery on them. So I think it's a very informal place with really comfortable seating, a dog, music playing. It's just really, but the parents, I don't think they self-refer because they don't know what it is.
Well, I think part of the problem right now is there's an awful lot of buzzwords going around in the school system. ELS and CRT has got several different variations, and there seems to be an awful lot of emphasis on what I would consider non-academic schooling.
Yeah.
And until I contacted you about having a discussion, I never heard of PASS. And it's just down the street from here, this kind of thing.
secret.
And the whole idea of what you're doing and how much you're doing and how do you get it started, totally lost in the shuffle. It's what they call esoteric information, known only to the enlightened few, kind of thing. And yet, I can see a lot of parents who say, oh, Johnny is having a problem, or Sally is not getting along too well. I don't know why. And they're not communicating with them. So how do you get this extra communication started? And I guess as an opener, at least go to the teacher, go to the principal or assistant principal and say, hey, how do I get my kid into PASS?
Right.
And you would take them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that works good. So what are you going to do for an encore? This is
Well, I think exactly what you were saying. We're going to take what we know now. We work with over 800 students. We work with 14 school districts. And what we're realizing is when we do the exit survey, when we do a reentry for the student to go back, about 80% of them don't have a trusted adult in their community or somewhere they can talk to the way that they've just spoken with the staff at the PASS program. So our next iteration is to try to figure out how we can do maybe some professional development on how to develop pockets of people in our communities, whether it's going to be in faith-based, whether it's going to be at the YMCA, whether it's going to be an after-school program, how we can train people to be those trusted adults. I think that's our next iteration. So how can we create these pockets of people who can have those brave conversations with adolescents who are struggling? Trusted, though, that's the biggest thing. They don't have a trusted adult. So.
well, trusted adult, I guess he has to be one before you could even start to work with the kid. So that's a different attitude. But at the same time, what kind of training would a teacher need, assuming you take somebody out of the school system and nominate them, you're going to be it. how do you pick them?
I think the student picks them. You know, it's somebody
Yes.
that the student has a rapport with, and it could be a teacher. I mean, it could be anybody. But I think making sure that there's that rapport, that it's somebody that's listening to them, I think is the most important thing. Just actually hearing what they have to say.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm starting a training on April 11th with 4 different districts, and they're identifying 6 people in each of their communities to come and have these community conversations and create spaces where kids know, like they will have an actual button that they wear, so the kids know that they're a trusted adult and they can talk to them.
yeah.
So I think that that's really, really important too.
And, you know, the trusted adult is incredibly important at the
Yeah.
school setting, but it's also really important in the community as well,
Absolutely.
too. And so all our past students who do come to the program receive a 3-month YMCA membership where we invite them to come to the Y, or the North Shore Y, and, you know, to spend time and to engage in our programs. So we really do want to integrate them not only, you know, back into their districts, but into their communities so that they feel like they have that support amongst adults and also amongst their peers. I think that's one of the best parts of the PASS program as well. At the end of the day, all of the students, they hang out together. It's called therapeutic rec time. So they might play, you know, a heads up game. They might play pool or foosball, but, you know, and it feels like they're having fun and just hanging out. But really what they're doing is they're building connections. They're building that trust. They're, you know, they're opening up. They're having great conversations and sharing with each other.
Well, they got a group that's like me. They're not different. It's my kind of people. And surprisingly, we've had a half hour of fun. And thank you very much for sharing all this information. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, at the end of the credits is my email. If you got any questions, comments, or discussion you want, send me a note. And there's always room for you at the table if you got a comment you'd like to make. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.